So he started out with the telegraph, moved here to trying to get voice over 2 wires, and then up here to the left is the actual telephones that they used to use and how they developed over time to a lot of things that we can recognize today. Hey everybody, welcome to Tigner Adventures. So we are visiting the Alexander Graham Bell National Historic Site here in Canada.
Nova Scotia.
In Nova Scotia, yep. So I was kind of confused because when we first came up to this area, it shows a plane here, they call it a dart. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, I thought that he invented the telephone. Well, he did. So he invented the telephone, but he also was the first one to invent a flying machine, mechanical, motorized, I should say, flying machine that flew here in Canada. And so that's what this National Historic Site is talking about. So we're going to go inside and take a look. It's $9 to get in as an adult or $7 for a child, unless you have a Discovery Pass. So we happen to bought a Discovery Pass, so that's like a national pass to all their national parks and everything, just like there is one like that in the US that we own. In our case, we're a senior, we own a senior pass, so I don't ever have to buy it again. This is the second year that we have had to purchase this pass here in Canada.
They need to catch up.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we're gonna go check this out and see what it's all about. So we're just coming into the center here. And over here on the left, we have the history of how things went. So interesting that Alexander Bell was born in 1847 in Edinburgh, Scotland. He does have his whole history here. He came over to Canada with his parents in August 1st, 1870. And interesting enough, he arrives in Boston in 1871 to teach at the Boston School of Deaf Mutes. And that's when, well actually 1872 is when he begins work on the multiple telegraph. In 1887, Helen Keller's father approaches Bell for advice on her education. So Bell created the first successful phone call in 1876 when he called to Mr. Watson, "Come here, I want you." And Mr. Watson, being in a separate room, heard it clear as him being in the same room. So Bell's invention was now a working reality. This museum just goes on and on as it goes through his whole life timeline. He was quite the inventor. And there's a lot of names I recognize here from other inventors, so he collaborated with a lot of different inventors and they all came up with the ideas of how to do things. So it wasn't just the telephone, although if we go in the back here we can see this section that's just on the telephones. So he started out with the telegraph, moved here to trying to get voice over 2 wires, and then up here to the left is the actual telephones that they used to use and how they developed over time to a lot of things that we can recognize today, including on the far right here, cell phones. So it all started from this simple design, the old operator console. I have a friend that used to work on phones a lot that I worked with, and they were operator based back in the day. I don't know if it's would have been this old, but pretty interesting how everything was on a party line back then. And interesting enough, as you go through this, you can see all the different instruments and things they use to test out things or come up with different ways of doing things. So archaic in a way compared to things we use today to do things, and yet they were able to come up with something so magnificent and, in a way, simple ideas of just being able to talk to each other over the air or a phone wire. Ninette says, well, might seem simple, but I'm sure it wasn't simple, and really it's not. Of course, behind every successful man is a woman pushing him on, and his wife, Mabel Bell, was a constant source of inspiration for Alexander. She, too, had a broad scope of interest. Not only did Mrs. Bell manage the family's personal finances, she also took a leading role in the running of their estate. So this museum is not just of the accomplishments that Mr. Bell had with the help of a lot of different individuals also. So it kind of talks about them also, but it really goes into his love affair with his wife and how they met and how they became, a couple, and together came up with a lot of this that's held here in this museum. Pretty inspirational, actually. Here's a picture of Mr. Bell. Living in an era of instant communications, it is hard for us to imagine a time when people waited days, weeks, or months to receive communication from their colleagues or loved ones. So he wrote letters back and forth to his eventual wife, Mabel, and through those letters, sometimes it could take up to a month before they would be able to correspond back and forth. But through those letters, it says that we learn all about their mutual love and respect. Pretty exciting to see their lives here and just how excited they were to learn and invent new things. Pretty interesting, just all the things that he was actually involved in. So sometimes desperation is what gives us inspiration. So their son was born premature and died. His lungs weren't fully developed, and so he created this jacket with the idea that it would, through a tube, they would be able to compress and uncompress, a child's lungs. And anyway, that started that whole idea. So not just telephones, he was open to anything that could help out people. Mr. Bell was always interested in ways to invent things and make things better. And this talks about him being part of this Aerial Experiment Association, which his wife was an honorary member because she funded the organization with $30,000. And their whole idea was to get somebody up in the air. So in 18 months, the AEA builds and flies 4 airplanes and 2-man carrying kites, and manages to take ideals and concepts and make them into reality. Along the way, the AEA conducts some of the earliest public flights in North America and is the first to fly a distance greater than a kilometer and to conduct the first powered flight in Canada. So Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge from the U.S. Army, a member of the AEA with Mr. Bell. And it's interesting that he was the first individual that, riding as a passenger aboard the White Brothers aircraft, dies in the plane crash at Fort Myer, Virginia. So the death of Selfridge. The AEA had planned to meet in Washington, D.C. to discuss the future of the association. Bell and Baldwin get the devastating news while en route. At the first of the video, we talked about the airplane that he had flown first, powered airplane. This is the Silver Dart. Talks about their first flight, that they took off and then they safely land, but they had more than 30 flights after that over the next month. So that's all about the Silver Dart. So after that, they met together and in a dissolution meeting where they
had talked about everything they'd accomplished over the last 18 months. So they were only in service for 18 months as far as this association. They gave really high appreciation to Mabel Bell because she was the one that really made it happen. And then they dissolved the association. So that was the end of that.
So this museum is located in Baddeck, Nova Scotia, and overlooks this nice portion of the ocean here, or bay, or I'm not sure what you would call it, but pretty nice setup here. Well, that was pretty interesting.
That was a lot.
Yeah, there was a lot there. This is pretty cool. You really need to, if you have never been here before and you have the opportunity to be in Baddeck, Nova Scotia, then you really need to stop here and check this out, because this is pretty cool. They've really done a really good job with this, and they've basically gone through his whole life and his wife's life together, you know, just really laying it out really nice. So they've done a good job. So a lot of information. Yep. And it doesn't hardly cost anything. So, and if you have a pass, it's free. So with that said, we're going to just move on. So thanks for coming along with us on this little adventure. And we hope to see you down the road on another adventure. And if not, then hopefully on our next video. So you guys all take care.